نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين يا خاتم النبيين يا شفيع المذنبين يا أنيس الغريبين يا رحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Dr. Mahmoud, last Friday you asked me to remind you about a prophet.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so last week, we've been talking about Ahlul Bayt, but the question about the prophets came up a couple of times, so we covered part of that last week. There are certain aspects, and when you're talking, your mind wanders sometimes, and then you forget certain points that are important, and then later on you think, oh yeah, I should have mentioned that, and I should have mentioned that. So that's kind of what happened. And as I was telling the brother, in a way that's good, because that also forces us to kind of reiterate what we said before. So it becomes a review as we add things on. So, when we're talking about the prophets, as we said, all of them are sent by Allah. All of them are sent with the same message in general. Somebody needs to mute. Okay. Nope. Yeah, we're still getting background. So somebody, whoever came on, they can mute their system. We were getting a lot of background there. Okay, that's better. So, and as we mentioned last week, 3 things that they all had in common as far as what they told their people. One, of course, that everybody knows is La ilaha illallah. So all of them told the people about worshiping Allah and not worshiping anything other than Allah. They also, we know from the hadith, they also told every prophet told them about the fitna of Dajjal, about the coming of Dajjal. So this is such a great fitna that even the prophets, in whose followers' time Dajjal would not come. So even they are telling their followers about this fitna. And as we know, this will come during this time. And in fact, we are seeing the effects of this fitna already. And this is what, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he talked about that, the age will come when, the liar will be considered truthful and the truthful will be considered liar, and the trustworthy will be considered untrustworthy and the trustworthy will be considered trustworthy. So you have basically a reversal of everything, to the extent that we're seeing this not only in people's character but even in their characteristics, where you have the reversal of even genders.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So this is so prevalent now. Now the other thing that each prophet told their people about is about the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every prophet told their people about the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether they told them by a certain name or by his various characteristics, but they all told them. So the people at that time, when they accepted their prophet and became Muslims, so every prophet's followers are Muslims, those who are following the true teachings of that prophet, right?
Yeah.
So by accepting their prophet, they are in a reality also accepting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because that's part of their accepting their prophet. So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this also in the Quran in Surah A'raf, Surah number 7, verse 157, where he talks about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and about the descriptions that given about him being given in the Torah and in the Injil. So in the books that was revealed to Musa alayhi salam and in the book that was revealed to Isa alayhi salam. Now, even if you look at the books that these people follow today, even with all the changes that have been made, you still find references, that, if you really start analyzing, there's no other way to explain those references except by saying that this is talking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the followers of Isa alayhi salam, during the time of Isa alayhi salam, and between the time of Isa alayhi salam and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those who followed the true teachings of Isa alayhi salam were Muslim. The same way those who followed the true teachings of Musa alayhi salam were Muslim. Later on, as people changed those teachings, then they deviated. And then you get other names. And this is also why, even if you look in other books, other than those that we know for sure are books that were revealed that were changed, even in other books that we don't know whether it might have been a revealed book or not, you still find references to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, because this knowledge has been passed on, you know, from the beginning of time. And you think about this also, you know, like in the time of Musa alayhi salam, the advisors of Pharaoh told him that this child will be born who's going to overthrow your kingdom. How did they know? You know, the knowledge has to be there somewhere. Otherwise, how would they know? So they knew from the previous scriptures or the previous teachings. They knew this. So of course, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being a Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being a Habibullah, every prophet told their people, because their job was to get the people ready for the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But another aspect that's very important to also understand, and this is something that's known as Zuriyat ad-Din, this is a necessity of the religion, is that to understand and to acknowledge Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the last and final messenger. That there is no messenger to come, there is no prophet to come after him. You know, and we'll get to the coming of Isa alayhi salam in a minute. But this isn't simply, you know, a lot of people, all they know is the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Khatam an-Nabiyyin. You know, and you know, Khatam or Khatam you can translate other than in ways other than last. You can also translate as seal, which is still a correct translation, but it still really means the same thing. You know, just like when you seal a letter, what happens? That's it. It's closed. Nothing further. No addition, no subtraction. That's it. Okay? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the seal of the prophets. He is also the last of the prophets. You know, we know this also from the saying of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on multiple occasions where he says, "La nabi abadi," that there is no prophet after me. And we know this from other verses of the Quran. You know, we look at Surah Al Imran, Surah number 3, verse number 81, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the mithaq, or the covenant that He took with the prophets. وَإِذَا أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ النَّبِيِّينَ. Okay, who is this that, you know, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to them that, you know, or is saying to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually, and remember when Allah took that covenant with the prophets that you will be given the book and the wisdom, and then comes to you this exalted messenger. Do you believe in him and help him? And they all said yes. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so read the verse 81 and 82. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then He says, then be a witness over each other, and I am a witness over you all. So this also tells us, you know, and it says about that Rasul, in that verse it says that this Rasul, exalted Rasul comes, who affirms what was given to you. Which means that he has to come after all of them, because otherwise how can he affirm what was given to the ones before him, if he's not the last? So that verse in itself tells us he's the last. You know, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. That in itself tells us he's also the last, and he's also, you know, the mercy to all of creation. So there are multiple verses of the Quran that tell us the same thing in different ways. You know, and this is also why this is such an important aspect of the deen, that if someone's wishy-washy about this, he is no longer Muslim. So if a man declares himself as a prophet, and I go and ask him, well, what are the proofs that you are a prophet? Okay. With the intention that maybe he is, maybe he's not. I don't even accept what he says. I become kafir. I've exited Islam, because I gave the notion that there could be a prophet after Rasulullah, so some possibility. That's not even a possibility. So to even think that there could be a prophet after Rasulullah negates your iman. This is how important this concept is in Islam. He is the last and final messenger. Isa alayhi salam, when he comes, of course, he's already come. So he's going to come again. Okay? But he's not going to come in the position that he's coming with some new sharia or some new laws. He's going to come as a follower of Rasulullah. Even though he is a prophet, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, once he's given him this title, has not taken it away from him, but he's not going to come in that position or in that authority. And he will emphasize this when his army and the army of Mahdi al-Islam meet, and Mahdi al-Islam asks him to lead the salat, and he will refuse. And he will say, you will lead the salat, because I am his, I'm coming, not as the imam, but as the follower. So to emphasize this point, he will pray behind the representative of Rasulullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who will be Imam Mahdi at that time. Even though his status is above the status of Imam Mahdi, but to emphasize the point that he is a follower of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he will pray behind the representative of Rasulullah sallallahu
So
alaihi
you
wasallam.
said Isa praying behind Imam Mahdi, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's the final thing.
Well, that will be, so they will meet, when the armies meet, they will pray, he will pray like this, and then of course, they will, fight against Dajjal. Isa al-Islam will destroy Dajjal, and all the other things that will happen, which, I'm not going to go into right now, because there are a lot of things, but I just want to emphasize this point, that Isa al-Islam at that time, why will he not lead the salat? Why will he pray behind Mahdi al-Islam? To emphasize that he's not coming with, even though he is a prophet, he's not coming in the capacity of a prophet.
The follower.
He's a follower of Rasulullah. And this is what the verse says. The verse says that when this Rasulun, verse 81, it says, do you believe in him and render him help? Meaning, do you follow him? You will become his follower. And they all said yes. Okay? So these are important points to understand. And this also, and as I said, even if someone questions, because there is, we've talked about ijma before, consensus, which a lot of people throw the word out. But consensus is it's not a very common thing in actuality. But there is consensus, and there's consensus of the Sahaba, that Khatam al-Nabiyyin means the last prophet. And this consensus was made at the time of the Battle of Yamama. And it was there before, but they verbalized it at that moment, saying this is it. This is what it means, and no one else can declare. And even the idea that someone thinks that they're even close to prophethood, it is alien or outside of Islam. Okay. So any questions on that?
So Imam Mahdi and Isa, they coming in at pretty much the same time, right?
Yeah, they will. Well, Mahdi al-Islam will come first, and then armies will be sent against him. He will fight against these armies. He will conquer Constantinople, and then the Dajjal will appear. His fitna will already be there, but then he will appear. So then Mahdi al-Islam will mobilize his forces again. And as he's doing this is when Isa al-Islam will return, and then these armies will join together against the Dajjal. So they will be contemporaries as far as in the same time period. Okay. I think that should be pretty clear. And also, the other point to make here. When I accept and when I believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I have accepted and believed in all the previous prophets. So that's also, we should be clear about that as well.
So Dr. Marcus, anything had to do with the Euphrates River?
Yeah, there's, he's asking about the Euphrates River. I got competition here. Okay. So brother's asking about the Euphrates River. there's a lot that's going to happen there.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Euphrates is one of those rivers that its origins is the roots of Sidrat al-Muntaha. The origins of the Nile and the Euphrates are the roots of Sidrat al-Muntaha, which is and the roots of Sidrat al-Muntaha are in the sixth heaven. Okay, so its branches and leaves extend on to through the seventh heaven, but its roots are in the sixth heaven, and the origins of the Nile and the Euphrates are from this. So these are special rivers, and there's a lot of things that are going to happen in those areas, including the wars, the mountain of gold, all of these things that will happen there. So and this will all be around this time, with Imam Mahdi and Isa al-Islam and Dajjal and all of this. So it's all going to be around that time when all of this is going to happen.
So Euphrates River is a root from Nile River?
No. Euphrates is separate, Niles is separate, but their origins is the same. Okay. So we know the Nile is in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Nile is in Africa.
Yeah.
Not just Egypt, but it goes through all these countries in Africa, and it flows north.
Yes, flow.
Yeah. Okay, which is unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And the Euphrates, of course, flows south, which is the normal for most rivers. And the origins of the Euphrates is actually in this world, from what we can see, is up in Turkey. So it goes through Turkey, comes through Iraq, and the major part of Euphrates is in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen there. We also know, and Euphrates has been mentioned. Yeah, Kiskan heavy. Euphrates is also mentioned in various ahadith, including the ahadith in relation to Karbala, because of course Karbala is right next to Euphrates, and this was mentioned in that hadith when Jibreel alayhi salam comes and talks about what's going to happen to Imam Hussein alayhi salam with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they mention Euphrates because that's where it's going to happen. Well, that's where it happened. Okay.
I was reading that translation of that ayah to 381.
Yes.
What how does it start?
وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ النَّبِيِّينَ.
وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ.
Yes.
وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ. So the translator, I don't remember his name, but he said that there he uses the word behold. I overtook it,
Yeah. See there, it's.
But later in the same surah, in another ayah that has the same wa'iz in it, he says he uses the word remember. So it's like he's, choosing his words to not show the status of Rasulullah,
Yeah, so we see this a lot, unfortunately. So the question is, like in one translation he was reading, the wa'id, certain points the translators will translate it as behold. Okay. And other places they will translate it correctly where it says and remember. Okay. Like here, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. So in Surah Baqarah, and it occurs many places. Okay, so behold, who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying behold to? The Quran, who is it being revealed to? He's saying it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Behold this, okay. But the reality, wa'id is past tense. It's remember. You're beholding something that's happened before. All right. So if I'm beholding something, remember when, or it should be behold when your Lord took. Okay. So that also comes into the same meaning in that sense. If you take it completely. Of course, they pick and choose how they want to translate because they want to, again, a lot of these knowingly or unknowingly tend to hide the status of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they're translating the Quran. So because they know that the common person reading a translation isn't going to be looking or rechecking what the Arabic actually is, because he doesn't even know what the Arabic actually is. But if you read the hadith in Sahih Muslim, according to Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu, if you don't have any concept of the status and azmat and greatness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you haven't read the Quran. If you read the Quran, then that's what you're going to get out of it. Every verse is connected to, literally, the beloved, or the lover, who is Allah, talking to his beloved, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So every verse is connected this way. So even when I look at like the verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about Fir'aun and Musa alayhi salam, and we see when Fir'aun is disrespectful to Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wording, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does to Musa alayhi salam, we see this. So this is a warning for us. Musa alayhi salam is Kalimullah. He is the one who spoke to Allah. The one who spoke to Allah is not the same as the one who is loved by Allah, who is the beloved of Allah. Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves Musa alayhi salam, but his status is not anywhere near the status of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did this to Fir'aun for disrespecting his Kalim, the one who spoke to him, then what will he do to us if we disrespect his beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So even here we see that greatness and that grandeur. Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending, say, broken be the hands of Abu Lahab, who raised his hand against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? And what happens? Immediately the verses come. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not only, talks about Abu Lahab being in the fire, but even his wife being in the fire, because his wife supports her husband in this. There are, yes, the wife should support the husband, but there are times when she should not. And when it comes to Allah and His Messenger, the rights of Allah and His Messenger, no one takes precedence over that. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter whether the king or they think they're the king of the world. Okay? So these, so if you read the Quran, and if you're reading the Quran and it's not causing you to love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam even more and more, then you're not really reading the Quran.
Meaningless.
Yeah, it's pointless. It's pointless. If all you're getting out of the Quran, which is what some people get out of the Quran, is, see, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't know this, or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't have authority over this, or something like this. Well, yeah, you're reading the Quran just like Shaitan reads the Quran.
That's true.
That's exactly true.
Yeah.
So you only get the point what you want to spread out.
Yeah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He says in the Quran, He says that He guides some by it and He misguides other by it. What does it mean He misguides? It means that He lets them go. They want misguidance, so that's what He gives them. So it's literally, it's whatever you want.
The intention.
So if you want to love Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then read the Quran. If you want to, find faults in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, read the Quran. If you want whatever you want,
You'll get it.
that's what you're going to get. And that's one of the beauties of the Quran itself. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of us. And He has created His Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam not in need of us. So whatever you want, that's what you get. And now in the hereafter, it'll be a different story. Okay, that's where justice is served. So we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us of those who, when we read the Quran, it increases us in our love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our love for Allah, our love for the ones that they love. Okay. So you have to be very careful, because there are certain verses where they've even skipped words. If you know even a little bit of Arabic, you'll realize, they skipped over a word here, because that word would change the whole understanding of the verse to make you love Rasulullah ﷺ even more. And I'm not saying that all of them do this on purpose. There are very few translations that are really, really good. But what happens is, there's this brainwashing, or you get if I say something to someone, look out for this. Well, even if he wasn't expecting something, now his brain becomes in line with what I said. So now he's going to be looking out for that. So they've heard these things before so much that without even thinking, they just regurgitate what they've heard or what they've read. Which is sad, because here again in the Quran and multiple places in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ, that don't you ponder over the Quran. And then also he tells us to ponder over all of creation. Which means what? You can't ponder by closing your mind. This is the only book that challenges us to open our minds. The only religious book that challenges us to open our minds and to analyze and to think. And so, the problem with most of us is, again, we come to it with blinders on. And because of the pre-programming that's gone on before, all the things, and then so when we read or hear something that in reality is not befitting to the status of Rasulullah, then we kind of just accept it without thinking. Even though what should happen is, if I hear something, even if I don't know, okay, is what this person's saying correct or not, it just doesn't fit, then I should investigate it. Okay? And it may be, okay, yeah, what he said was correct, it's just maybe the perspective was a little different. But it might be that what he's saying is totally incorrect. But you still need to investigate. In the hereafter, when I'm asked about things, my saying, well, he said this or he said that doesn't work. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be asking me.
What you?
Yeah. Like even in the grave, the only question that's mentioned in Sahih Bukhari that will be asked in the grave. Now, and I'll get into this too as well. Bukhari summarizes a lot of things. That's why you'll see in Sahih Bukhari, you see the hadith, and then you see that same exact hadith with same exact narrators in Sahih Muslim, and it covers a lot more, because Bukhari, the political pressures and everything else, there are certain things, even like here on this platform, if there are certain things, if I say this, what happens? YouTube shuts us off, right? Or Facebook shuts us down. So same thing back then. There was censorship. Censorship has always been there. And so Bukhari was very careful in certain things that he said. As far as the three questions that we know, we don't see that until Abu Dawud. Sunan Abu Dawud, we see those three questions in the hadith. In Bukhari, he only mentions one question. But that one question that he mentions is Ma ilmuka bihadha rajul. What did you know about this man? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You will be shown Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you'll be asked, what did you know about him? But in Abu Dawud, when we see the complete hadith, we say Ma ilmuk ma kuntu taqulu fi haqqi hadha rajul. And the question will be, and what in truth did you say about this man? Ma dinuka, ma rabbuka, who is your Lord? Ma dinuka, what is your way, or what was your way? No specification there. No emphasis on, okay, what did you know about Allah? What did you say about Allah? Did you, just who was your Lord? Period. What was your deen? Period. Not did you follow your deen? Did you read the books? Did you study? Did you do what you're supposed to be doing? None of that. Just what was your deen? But when it comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, now it's okay, what did you in truth say about him? All right? So again, if our reading the Quran and our reading the Hadith or listening to the Quran, or listening to the Hadith, or listening to any speaker, is not increasing us in our love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then, you know, we're not reading the Quran properly, we're not understanding the Hadith at all, and we definitely don't need to be listening to those people. Alright? So, you know, just, yeah, so you have to be very careful, and you have to approach things. It used to be that you could give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, you could listen to whoever and you could give them the benefit of the doubt. You could read whatever, and again, give them the, maybe they meant it this way, maybe that way. Yeah, but in this age of the fitna of Dajjal, now you have to be the opposite. You know, you have to look at everything with suspect, unfortunately. And then you have to work it out. But you still, either way though, if you looked at it with husn zan, with good, with considering, or looking at it optimistically, or whether you're looking at it from the other angle, you still need to analyze everything. And this is one of the things that unfortunately, you know, and especially when it comes to religion, we're not taught. You know, we're taught, okay, just regurgitate this, just memorize this and regurgitate it. You know, but there's a whole background to things, and you know, the common man, yeah, they you know, the common man in certain environments can get away with not knowing the background of things. But in this day where you got all of the fitna being thrown at you all at once, you know, you go on YouTube and suddenly the clip comes up about so and so or whatever, and you know, they say 2 words and it destroys your iman, because now you're questioning things that you shouldn't be questioning. Because you don't know the background to it. And so, you know, and honestly, this is why we're doing what we're doing here, is so that we can kind of give the background to various things that we in Ahl Sunnah, you know, have accepted from the beginning of time, which are now being challenged and questioned by those who claim to be Ahl Sunnah. You know, the guy is, you know, he's saying Ya Rasulullah, he's doing milad, he's doing all of these things, but then when it comes to you know, the virtues of Ahlul Bayt, you know, then they got an issue. I mean, you know, so which are things that again have been accepted from the beginning of time, and you know, they'll quote you the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, which also is a partial hadith. Hadith in Sahih Bukhari where Abdullah ibn Umar is asked about the fazilat of the companions, and he said that we the companions, we considered Abu Bakr afzal, and then after him we considered Umar afzal, and then after him Uthman afzal, and then after that we became silent. It's half the hadith. Bukhari doesn't mention the rest. We see the rest of this hadith in various other books of hadith, and in the shara, or the explanation of Shaykh Bukhari, of Ibn Hajar Asqalani and various other scholars. You know, is the follow-up question that would come to anybody's mind is asked, and that follow-up question is, what about Ali? And when he was asked, well, what about Ali? He says, well, he's Ahlul Bayt. You know, you can't compare apples and oranges, is what he's saying. Ahlul Bayt is, I mean, he's a separate category. I mean, that would be the natural question that would come to anyone who asked the first question, right? But Bukhari doesn't mention that, because Bukhari is at a time when when Banu Abbas, and as we talked about, you know, Banu Umayyah, open enemies of Ahlul Bayt. Banu Abbas were also enemies of Ahlul Bayt. They just did it in a different way, but they killed more Ahlul Bayt, more descendants of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein al-Islam than Banu Umayyah did. Okay? So Imam Bukhari knows this, so he knows. So he gave enough that for someone who's inquisitive, he will find out the rest. And it came in the later books. Right? But he didn't give enough for them to be able to hang him. Okay? So this is what people don't understand. And unfortunately, people don't want to understand.
Everyone want a shortcut degree,
Yes.
They're just going through the media and they want to learn very quickly, and the words somebody says in some countries and they're just realizing, but they're not doing practically. That's the reason it's totally they are missing for the kids too.
Well, everyone wants, the thing is, it's true, everyone wants everything quick.
Quick.
Alright. But truth takes sacrifice. And this is one of the lessons that Imam Hussein al-Islam taught us in Karbala. If you're going to stand up for the truth, then be ready to sacrifice. Even if you want to know the truth, you have to be willing to sacrifice, right? I mean, you look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You look at the companions with him. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he says that we, from the beginning of Islam, did not eat our stomachs full until after Khaybar. So those who became Muslim early on, we're talking what? 18 years. 18 years they were hungry. Never once did they eat till they're full, until after Khaybar. We can't go hungry for half a day. And we want Islam. I mean, you know, if Islam was so cheap and so easy, why did the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam need to go through what he went through in Mecca? Why did the companion, even in Medina we think, oh, things were easy. They weren't. You know, this is Habibullah, the beloved of Allah. Why did he have to go through all of this? He's teaching us. You know, he's taking a lot of our burdens upon himself, but at the same time he's teaching us.
Teaching us the patience.
Patience, and also, if you want something good, it doesn't just come like this. Sacrifice. You know, and that's the problem, is most of us aren't willing to sacrifice. You know, it's funny, you know, when we get our worldly degrees, you know, we're willing to be up all night studying. But when it comes to Islam, we want the 2-minute TikTok video, and that's it. Yeah. You know, I think about myself. You know, in college, I never stayed up all night. I just didn't do it. But when I went to medical school, I didn't have a choice because you're on call. So I would go in, you know, we would get like certain rotations. We would be there like 5 o'clock in the morning. If we were on call, so we were up from, you know, and you had to get up at 4 to get there at 5. So you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, you got to the hospital at 5 o'clock. You made your rounds, then you started seeing, you know, then other things that you had to do. Then you started taking admissions. You were there all night doing admissions, so you were up all night. You didn't get home until 5 or 6 o'clock the next day. You didn't sleep at all the whole time. So I went through that for 4 years, just to get my medical degree. You know, well, 2 years of rotations, and then 3 years of residence, 5 years, just to get my medical degree. And I think that Islam is going to be cheap and easy. It doesn't work that way. You know, nothing good comes easy, and it shouldn't, because otherwise, you know, if it came easy, then you have no value.
No value.
Yeah.
So anything come easy, you can lose it easy also.
Yes, easy come, easy go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy come, and that's the way it is. You know.
Anything come hard, it's gonna be hard to.
Because you're willing, whatever you acquire through hardships and you know, bloodshed and sweat and tears, you're willing to fight for it. And this gets to those people who, oh no, you know, I don't want to fight. You know, when it comes to religion, then oh no, you know, whatever. Don't criticize anybody. Don't argue with anybody. That's only for religion. If I challenge them, you know, like, there's this so-called scholar who was in Pakistan, and he escaped Pakistan and came to Canada, and now apparently he's down in Dallas, Texas. So I was talking to this brother who lives in Mobile, and he's an anesthesiologist, I just called him a few weeks ago because I hadn't talked to him in a long time. But so he was telling me he went to Dallas because they had some meeting, and this guy showed up, this scholar, you know, with his entourage. Okay, and this guy, people like him so much because, oh, you know, see, he never gets upset. you know, you ask him, you know, religious questions, or he gets challenged on religious things. He never gets upset and all of these, and he just says this. And of course, he's spewing what he's talking, you know, spewing a bunch of lies when he's talking, though. But oh, because he's so nice and he doesn't get upset, he's just a good scholar. All right. Well, this person, he was there, and this guy comes in, and he extended his hand toward my friend who's in Mobile. My friend refused to shake his hand. The guy got upset. So when it came to him, his personal issues, he got upset. How dare you not shake my hand? Huh? All right. But when it comes to religion, oh no, you know, it's whatever. Everything's free for all. Which tells you he has no love for the religion. He just has love for himself.
It's kind of a business.
Yes. Nafs.
Nafs.
You know, the nafs. And you know, he makes these statements that totally are against the status and the azmat and the you know, the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And people still don't understand it. But here, you know, of course, he's going to claim he loves Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he has no problem when people say things against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He himself says things against. But now, when this person refused to shake his hand, now he's upset.
Practically, personally.
Yeah. This is, you know, our deen should be personal for us.
Sure.
It should be more than personal for us. We kind of deviated a lot from where we were going, so I'm going to come back now to Ahlul Bayt, because they are that beacon of light that shows us how to ponder, how to analyze, and also, you know, everybody talks about hikmah, you know, wisdom, and they translate wisdom. Hikmah is, you know, wisdom is not simply, you know, being nice and polite. This is what people think. Wisdom also includes, hikmah also includes, you know, knowing when to fight, when to debate, when to simply discuss. There are times for everything. And when we look at Ahlul Bayt, we see all of these examples. You know, so we're talking, you know, we were talking about Ali radiallahu anhu, you know, and we will see this when we talk about his khilafah. Even like before any battle, he was always send people to go and reason with the other side. Because there was a time and a place for it. But then when it didn't come, when there was no other way out, then Zulfiqar, you know, came out of his sheath. Again, there's a time and a place for it. Everything has its time and its place. And the problem is, we just want to take one part of it and say, this is hikmah. No. You know, so either we take this part or that part, and no one wants to take the whole package together. And Islam, this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh you who believe, addressing all you believe, you know, enter Islam whole, completely. Fi silmi kaffa. That enter Islam completely. You know, it's not pick and choose. People have different personalities, so certain aspects of it are more prevalent in a certain personality, but still, you know, you look at Umar, radiallahu anhu, personality, very firm and hard, but when he takes a khilafah, you see how soft he is as well, how soft he can be. You know, because these are people who are reflections of the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay.
Dr. Muhammad, I have one question. So all of them, the rest of Khilafah is not a part of Ahlul Bayt, like Abu Bakr, Umar, and Usman.
So the question is the rest of Khilafah Ahlul Bayt? When I say Ahlul Bayt, you have different categories of Ahlul Bayt. Okay. So you know, technically, the whole ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his al, is his family. Anyone who believes in him is his family. Just like in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Al Dawood. But he's not talking about, you know, the progeny of Dawood, he's talking about the followers of Dawood. Alu Firaun, the followers of Firaun. Okay, so technically that. Okay, but then you have different categories as well. So then you have those who are Ahlul Bayt, who are which includes the wives of Rasulullah and various other relationships. Okay. So that's another category of Ahlul Bayt. Then you have like Ahlul Bayt when we're talking about so then we have Ahlul Bayt when we're talking about so another category would be like for those on whom zakat is forbidden. Okay, so basically, the progeny of Ali, rather than the progeny of Aqil, his brother, and various, and the progeny of Ja'far, so these, so all of these, you have different varying categories. When I'm talking about Ahlul Bayt at this time, and in general, when I say Ahlul Bayt, I'm being more specific, and I'm talking about Ahlul Bayt al-Kiswa, those who are taken underneath the cloak, and that lineage. So, and when we say, like even in Durood, when we say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, it really specifies them. Okay? But again, in generality, the whole ummah is Al. But as you get more and more specific, then things shift.
You say Aida?
Huh?
Aida as a family?
Al.
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 Al is family.
Okay. Because in Arabic they say Aida, I believe. In my understanding. They also call it Usrati too. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. Usrati, that's a family.
Yes, that's also, but those are different terms for. But Al is the family, and then so here, like again, when we talk about those that were taken underneath the cloak, we've talked about this before. You have and just to kind of go over the background to that again, is that you have two incidences, and probably more, but two that I'm going to mention. One is, the Mubahila. Okay, so the Mubahila is when the Christians of Najran came. We talked about this before. So the Christians of Najran came to debate with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is after Sulh Hudaybiyah. So now, because the propaganda has been shut off, or at least been limited, and now people can move freely and they can come and meet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam without fearing that Quraysh or somebody's going to retaliate against them. And this is also when he wrote all these letters to all these leaders. And this is why these Christians for Najran, again, is basically southern Saudi, northern Yemen, that area right in there. And you have like 60 priests from there that came. And it's mentioned in Surah Al-Imran. So if you read basically the first 80 verses of Surah Al-Imran deal with this, for the most part. And this is when, so they debated him, they discussed things, and of course, they had no arguments against the arguments of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But like they say here, in the end, what do they say? But I still believe. So they didn't get anywhere. I still believe that, so like even here, you talk to people and they can't argue when you talk to them and you tell them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have nothing to come back, at you with. And you talk about His oneness and all of this, and everything you're saying, they're nodding their head and they're agreeing, and then in the end they'll say, but I still believe Jesus is Son of God. So same thing here. So they didn't accept. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think it's verse 59 of Surah Al-Imran, it mentions the Mubayala, that when clear proof has been given and they still disagree, then, say to them, Abna'ana wa abna'akum, wa nisa'ana wa nisa'akum, wa anfusina wa anfusakum, that that we bring our sons and you bring your sons. We bring our women and you bring your women. We bring ourselves and you bring yourself. And so they initially agree that we will do this mubahala. And what the mubahala is, you do this, and then you invoke the curse of Allah on the one who is the liar. So this is what mubahala is. So they agreed, and they're supposed to meet. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he leaves the house, as he's walking, he calls. He calls Imam Hassan al-Islam, Imam Hussein al-Islam. He calls Ali, and he calls Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. Okay. So, and it's very interesting. And he takes them under his cloak. And when he takes them under his cloak, he says, Allahumma ha'ulahi ahli. That Allah, only these are my family. Right. And what's interesting is it says, and he's holding Imam Hussein al-Islam in his arms. Imam Hassan al-Islam is holding his hand. Ali and Fatima alayhimus salam are with him underneath the cloak. And as he's walking, the leader of the Christians, when he sees them coming, he says to his people, he says, don't do this. Because I'm seeing a people who, if they ordered the mountains to move, they would move. And if we do this, there will be no Christian left until the end. So don't do this.
So they gave up.
So they come to him, they say, look, we don't want to do the mubayalah. But we still don't want to accept, but we want you to send someone trustworthy to us to teach us. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah, which is why he is known as Aminul Ummah. He is the trustworthy of the Ummah. And he's from the Ashar al-Bashara, Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu. So that's one. The other time is when Ayat al-Tathir is revealed. So here he's in the house of his wife, Bibi Salama, radiallahu anha. And in that, the verse comes. And Quran Shif coming in? Yeah. Which is easy to remember because it's verse 33 of Surah number 33. So 33. Surah Ahzab, verse number 33. And so the verse starts off where else and stay quiet, addressing the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And stay quietly in your houses, and make not a dazzling display like that of the former times of ignorance, and establish regular prayers and pay zakat and obey Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. But then the second part of the verse, where which is why it's named Ayat al-Tathir, إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. And Allah only wishes to remove all abomination from you, O ye members of the family, to make you pure and spotless. Okay. The next verse, which is verse 34, again addresses the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. So there are people who say, oh, see, this part is also addressing the wives. The problem is here, one small issue with that is, if you look at before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He addresses the wives of Rasulullah, He says to them that they are not like other women. They are the wives of Rasulullah, and if they do good, they will be given double reward. But if they do something bad, they will also be given double punishment. Okay. So everything is the fadl of Allah. It is the gift, the grace of Allah. But there are certain graces that he gives in lieu of something. Simple example, we make our salat, so he rewards us. So we did something, so because of that, now he gives us something. Okay? This is fadl jazai. This is jaza, a reward but it's still his fadl, because he's not obligated to give us anything. We could be praying our whole lives, he doesn't have to give us anything for it, in return for it. It's still his fadl. Okay? Then you have what's known as fadl ikhtisasi, okay? Which is fadl that he just gives, because he gives. Simplest example of this, and this is the issue that Shaitan had with Adam alayhi salam. Shaitan had worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, hundreds of thousands of years, right? To the extent that his name is Azazil. So to the extent that Azazil is now given a promotion, and he's made Iblis. He's given Iblis from libas. He's given the dress of the angels, that you can go and roam with them. But how did he become shaitan? So he's given, he was given this promotion because of all of this worship he had done, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the angels, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, right? That I'm going to create a vicegerent on the earth. Who's the vicegerent? Adam alayhi salam, not shaitan. Okay. And as soon as, and what does he say? وَنُفَخْتَ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِ فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. That when I blow my soul into him, then you prostrate to him. Shaitan's included in this order because he's amongst the angels. He's not an angel, but he's donned the dress of the angel, so he's amongst them. So he's part of the order as well. He refuses. One of the things is here, Adam alayhi salam. What has Adam alayhi salam done to be given such a high status? Did he make any zikr? Did he make any sujood? Did he do anything? Absolutely nothing. Shaitan had been worshipping for hundreds of thousands of years. And no one bowed down to him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't order anyone to bow down to him, to prostrate to him. Adam alayhi salam has not done anything. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, why? Because this is fadl ikhtisasi. Prophets, and this is another point since we were talking about prophets earlier. Prophethood is fadl of Allah ikhtisasi, because of his intention. He simply gives it to them. No one can challenge that, why did you give it to him and not to me? See all the things I've done. And this is also one of the proofs against Mirza Qadian. Because Mirza Qadian, his claim was that first he was mujaddid, and then he became this, and then he became this, and this, and this, and then he became a prophet, and then he became the master of prophets, and whatever else his claims are. Okay? That's not how prophethood works. Anyone who claims he was this before and then he became a prophet because of his hard works and his efforts is a liar. Of course, anyone who claims prophethood after, like we were talking about earlier, after Rasulullah is a liar. But even if before Rasulullah, if someone had claimed that they did all these good things and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them a prophet, he's a liar. Because prophethood is simply the favor of Allah, because it's the favor of Allah. So here in this verse, first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again directly talks about the wives. But it says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهِ. It is only the intention of Allah. Not because of anything that they've done. The ones that he's talking about, it's just he intends it, period. And if anyone has an issue with it, then he needs to take it up with Allah, because this is only Allah's intention. Not my intention. Not anybody else's intention. Allah says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهِ. It's only Allah's intention. لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلُ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرُكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. To purify, you people of Ahlul Bayt with the perfect purification. Okay. when this verse is revealed, it's one thing, okay, I can take this verse and come up with various explanations and say, no, it applies to this, and applies to him, and applies to her, and this, okay. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is the explanation to the Quran. He, in reality, is the Quran. When the verse is revealed, again, he's in the house of Bibi Salma, radiallahu anha. And from there, he says to go and call. He has Ali, Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein, alayhi salam, called. And when they arrive, he says to them, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent a gift for you. And again, he takes them under his cloak. And he says, Allahumma ha'ulahi ahli. When he takes them under the cloak, Bibi Salma, radiallahu anha, salamullahi alayha, she also wants to come in. These were not people to stay back from an honor. So when she tries to get underneath the cloak, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that you are good where you are. This is not for her. This is not for you. This is for them. He says you are good where you are. You've been given much good. Some people try to explain this because everybody has to, spin things. So they try to explain this as, the reason he took them under the cloak was because he wanted to remove any filth from them, remaining from them, and she was already pure, so she didn't need to come under the cloak. That explanation could potentially hold some water if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself wasn't underneath the cloak. He is underneath the cloak with these four. And then he says, Allahumma ha'ulahi ahli. And Imam Tahawi, who passed around 310 Hijri, great scholar, muhaddis, mufassir, from Egypt, he says that when the one in whose house it was revealed was not allowed to come underneath the cloak, then who is anybody else to come underneath that cloak? So again, we have the incident of the Mubahila, and then we have this revelation of this verse. Each time, again, as I said before, there are different levels of Ahlul Bayt. When I'm talking about them in general, or more specific, rather, when I'm talking about them specifically, these are the ones we're talking about. And we're going to get into other things later on as well, inshallah. There are many things that I skipped over as we're talking about, as they kind of passed, because things later on, we'll bring them up later on because they'll become more apparent or easier to understand at that point. But and this is again, when we look at Ali, as we've talked about before, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that you are the criterion between Iman and hypocrisy. That only a believer will love you and only a hypocrite will have animosity against you. And this is in Bukhari. Okay. And animosity can be hidden in various forms. And one of those forms is that when somebody starts talking about Ali, they want to, no, well, what about him and what about him and what about him? That's not who I'm talking about right now. And those who know, like even here, and the good scholars, when they're talking about like Abu Bakr or Umar or Uthman, radiallahu anhum, when we're talking about them specifically, if you don't know the whole background to things, you will think because of the way we talk about them that there's no one greater than them. But we do that with all of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam whenever we talk about them. So but again, Ahlul Bayt are the ones who are created for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are his blood. which again, just as Abdullah ibn Umar, when he was asked, what about Ali? After he mentioned Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, he said, oh, he's Ahlul Bayt. That's a different category. So people want to mix things up, and then they want to accuse us of disrespecting the companions, which, I shouldn't have to say that, but it's farthest from the truth. But so coming back to just a few more minutes, I'm going to kind of cover a couple of things since we've kind of digressed and diverged so much today. When we look again, as we talked about, Khatam al-Nabiyyin. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he makes that order, because he's sending them to Yamama. Yamama, if you know, is really kind of the northern aspect of modern day Riyadh. That's where the Battle of Yamama took place. Najdi tribe of Banu Hanifa and Musaylima. Of course, everybody else had joined him. Everyone who opposed Islam had joined him. So he has an army of 40,000 men. So Abu Bakr, when he's sending the army, before he sends the army, when the discussion comes up, of course the ijma, one of the ijma is, or consensus is, that Khatam al-Nabiyyin means this, that there is no prophet after him, period. So anyone who wants to come after that and come up with a new definition, like some people have. In the 1800s, there was a scholar in India who wrote a book, and in that he says that the average person thinks that Khatam al-Nabiyyin means that he's the last prophet. But the Ahl ilm, the knowledgeable people, know that there's no virtue in being the last of anything. And Khatam al-Nabiyyin, he goes on and he says that this means that he is the zenith or the pinnacle of prophets. Which is true that he is the zenith and the pinnacle of the prophets, but that doesn't mean that that's what Khatam al-Nabiyyin means. And then he goes on and he says in that same book, he says that that if a prophet were to come after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it wouldn't affect him being Khatam al-Nabiyyin. Okay. So, one is, if you say if, you've given it a possibility where there is no possibility. And it wasn't long after he published this book that, Mirza Qadian declared himself as a prophet, because he got the ammunition he needed to support his claim. So when you take, so again, ijma on what that Khatam al-Nabiyyin means, the finality, in addition to meaning the seal, but the seal also tells you that it's the finality. But the other ijma that came out of that was that when they're being sent, and Ibn Kathir mentions this, when they're being sent to Musaylima, because the order before that was that when you go to an area, all of these people had become murtad, had apostated from Islam. When you go into an area, you wait outside, and if you hear the call to adhan, then don't attack. But Musaylima, he didn't change anything other than himself claiming himself prophet. He didn't deny the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that he is the prophet of Hijaz, I am the prophet of Najd. He said that he has sanctioned my prophethood. Same exact thing that Mirza Qadian does today, or his followers. The other thing that he says, alcohol is okay for you. And he said that Fajr and Isha are hard on you, so those are optional. He didn't change the adhan, he didn't change the iqamah, he didn't change the salat. So this is why, the companions, when they're leaving, they ask him, Abu Bakr radhi, that Ya Khalifatul Rasul, because the title of Amir al-Mu'mineen didn't come into existence until Umar radiallahu anhu. So Ya Khalifatul Rasul, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are going against an enemy. who looks like us, speaks like us, dresses like us, makes adhan like us, and makes iqama like us. So how will we know who is who? How will we know who is who? Because at that time you also have to remember, you're wearing armor. It's not like a soccer match. Red jerseys and blue jerseys. You're wearing armor. And you don't know who's who except by if somebody's holding the flag or they're defending that flag directly. And if you come in front of somebody, and they're wearing armor, how do you know? So it was the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that whenever he would send an army or he would be in an army, before the fight, he would give them a code word. The battle cry was always Allahu Akbar. The sha'r changed according to the codes, changed according to the enemy. So in Badr and in Uhud, they're fighting against the mushrikeen. The code word was Ahad. So if I meet somebody and I'm not sure who he is, okay, and I don't know if I need to attack him or not, I would say Ahad. And if he responded with Ahad, then I knew this is friend. If he didn't respond, then I knew this is the enemy. So for this battle, which is taking place 6 months after Rasulullah, taking place 700 miles away from Medina Munawwara, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he gives the code word. And he says that the code word for this battle will be Ya Muhammada sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you meet somebody and not sure if he's friend or foe, and again Ibn Kathir mentions this as well, he says Ya Muhammada. So if you meet somebody and you're not sure who he is, you say that. And these are words, the words that you say at the last moment should be good words. You're in the middle of the battle, these may be the last words you say. So he says, Ya Muhammada, which is also interesting because if anyone who knows a little bit of Arabic, knows that technically this should be Ya Muhammadu. If I call in Arabic, the natural ending is Dhamma. Right? Fish. All right. So, like, Qasim would be Qasimu. All right. But here, it's not Ya Muhammadu. It's Ya Muhammada. Because the fatah, gives it nida. It's like a child crying out to his parents. Kind of a request. And so you have 13,000 companions of Rasulullah who not only accept this, verbally say, yeah, we accept this, but put it into practice in the battle. And Khalid bin Walid, who is the flag bearer, about whom there's no doubt who he is, he's holding the flag of the believers. He is the general of the army. In the middle of the battle, when things, because this was, if you read the statements of the companions who were in that battle, they say that this was the most difficult battle that we had fought until that time. 700 Huffaz are martyred in that battle. Like 1,200 companions of Rasulullah are martyred in that battle. There was a moment in the battle when it seemed like they were going to lose, which is when Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu goes to the side to a small hill facing Medina Munawwara, and he calls out from there, Ya Muhammada sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he knows who his wasila is. And by the time he comes back, Wahshi radiallahu anhu has already killed Musaylima, and that whole army, now has no leader. And so they, but this is, this ended the Rida wars that we were speaking about, dealing with the apostates. This basically, in effect, ended that. This was the end. And so this is when the armies will now be starting to go and deal with direct, or more armies will be sent to Sham to deal with Qaisar, and then armies will start to move toward Iraq to deal with Qisra. And so that's what I thought I was going to talk about today. But because of kind of re-dealing with some other things and other questions that came up, inshallah we'll deal with that next week, because that's one of the points that I started talking about last week when I was talking about Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu wajh. And so, we talked about, when certain people came and offered him to bring an army so he could take control, and he refused. And again, since I don't have time, I don't want to go into details on this, because that was the point where I said, these are things that we have to go into details to understand what was going on. Otherwise, people start, criticizing various companions in very inappropriate ways and saying things that are not appropriate about the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes.
Someone's asking, is this the same Wahshi that martyred Imam Hamza?
Yeah. Actually, this Wahshi is, if you remember, that Wahshi, and we spoke about him a little bit back, I think last week or the week before. So he was offered his freedom for martyring Imam for Hamza radiallahu anhu, and he used this short spear which he martyred him with. And after he did that, he came and he collected his spear and he left the battlefield. So when he accepted Islam after Fatih Makkah, he actually had a death warrant, to be killed dead or he was wanted dead or alive, and preferably dead. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam eventually sends him word to accept Islam. He comes with that intention, and when he arrives in Medina, he sneaks in. He has to have his face covered because he knows that if someone sees him, he's dead. If someone sees him before he arrives in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he knows he's dead. So he has his face covered, and then he comes before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He uncovers his face, and as soon as he uncovers his face, all these companions pull their swords out, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells them to stop. And they say, Wahshi. He says, yeah, I know. And so again, actually we talked about this a couple of Fridays. It wasn't this Sunday, it was Fridays. I forgot. It was 2 Fridays ago. So this would be good review for those who are listening to that. So now he comes and he accepts Islam. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to him, he says, tell me how you killed my uncle. And he goes over the whole story, exactly how, and that moment when he threw his spear, and how the spear hit Hamza underneath his navel, and how when it hit him, he grabbed that spear and he looked at Wahshi. He looked up at Wahshi and started running toward Wahshi. I mean, you can imagine the fear and terror of Wahshi at that moment. Now, this man who should have fallen and be dead is running after him. So Wahshi turns around to take off, to start running, but after a few steps, Hamza radiallahu falls himself. And then when he realizes that he's passed, he comes and he pulls the spear and he goes. So as he's telling Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam this, the tears are flowing from the blessed eyes, down into the blessed beard of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And all of the other companions, all of them are also crying. And you have to remember, this is 5 years after Hamza radiallahu is martyred. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to Wahshi, he says, look, after this, he says, your iman is accepted, but don't come in front of me anymore. Because when I see you, I remember my uncle. And Wahshi honored that. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also told him, he says, now go and do something good. So this is another point, because I spoke about it 2 Fridays ago, because I wanted to emphasize the point, that people talk about when they talk about Imam Hussein al Islam. They say, oh, mourning is just for 3 days. This isn't mourning when we talk about him and we cry. This is love. This was 5 years after Hamza radiallahu was martyred. Rasulullah sallallahu is still crying. And the love of the uncle is nothing compared to the love of the grandson. And so to cry and to listen to the story of Imam Hussein al-Islam and to cry is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu. Because the hadiths are very clear when Jibreel al-Islam came, that's what he did. When Jibreel al-Islam came with the angel of rain, the hadiths are in Musnad Ahmad, in Imam Hakim's Mustadrak, in Bayhaqi, and various other books of hadiths. And they're Sahih hadiths, the same narrators as Bukhari and Muslim. And as they're telling him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that people from his ummah will kill Imam Hussein. And people on the ummah doesn't mean that they're still Muslim. I mean those who claim to be his followers. Because who can be Muslim after killing Imam Hussein al-Islam? Because they knew what they were doing. So when they're telling him this, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tears are flowing. So, coming back to Wahshi, radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, now go do something good. He used that same spear that he martyred Hamza radiallahu anhu with. He used that same spear now to kill Musaylama. And he said later on, he said, before my Islam, I killed the best of men. And after my Islam, I have killed the worst of men. So that's Wahshi. So it's the same Wahshi, radiallahu anhu. We got 4 minutes left.
Sorry,
Yes.
During the Karbala time, when Imam Hussein was been martyred, before the war stops or before they've been killed or martyred, Imam Hussein has said that to call one of his fellow mates, and he said, ask Yazid that there's a prayer time now, so we got to stop the war for a while. So, and Yazid said that we are not going to stop the war. And they prayed, half of them prayed, half of them continued the battle. Rest, they switched after that, again the prayer. For Yazid, was there any reason for not allowing them to, to perform the salah?
So the question is, I'll reiterate those for those who are on the phone. The question is that, about Karbala. So I'll restate the question first and then kind of make some adjustments in it. So the question is that during the time of Karbala, when Salat time came, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and it's interesting here, like a lot of us, we'll say like Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Ali alayhi salam, Fatima alayhi salam, Imam Hassan alayhi salam. If you read, say, Bukhari, and you read the Fazila of the Fatima salamullah alayha, if you read the Arabic, it says Fatima salamullah alayha. If you read the Arabic, it says Imam Hussein alayhi salam. If you read the Arabic, it says Imam Hassan alayhi salam. When they translate it, they say radiallahu anhu, because they don't want you to understand their status. There are certain companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the household salam came for. There are other companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who also salam came for, such as Bibi Aisha Siddiqa. We can also salamullah alayha radiallahu anha. Bibi Khadija al-Kubra, salamullah alayha radiallahu anha. When we speak about Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, when we speak about him amongst the companions, we say radiallahu anhu. When we speak about him amongst Ahlul Bayt, we say as-salam. When we speak about him in general, and especially when we're speaking about him in front of those who have issues with him, or who may have issues with him, we say karamallahu wajh. So everything has its purpose. But it's interesting because, and my father brought this up, there's this so-called scholar who's PhD in Sharia in Pakistan, and he was doing things, and my father went with him to his masjid one time, and the guy was talking, and he had some questions, and the guy couldn't answer my dad's questions because he had no answers for them. But that gets into a long story. But when he went to his library, he pulled out Bukhari, and he salam, exactly the same. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, bi Fatima salamullah alayha. But then you read the translation, and it says something different. And then they brainwash people into saying, oh, no, you can't say alayhi salam. Alayhi salam is only for prophets. Yeah. Then what do you say about Bibi Maryam, the mother of Isa alayhi salam? Was she a prophet? What do you say? Bibi Maryam salamullah alayha. So during the battle, and again reiterating the question, the battle, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, because it's time for salat, he asked permission for salat. And Yazid refuses and says, no, we'll continue. First off, Yazid wasn't there. So dealing with Ibn Ziyad and Amr bin Sa'd and Shimr. And Ibn Ziyad also isn't there physically, he's in Kufa. Yazid, of course, everything's being done under the orders of Yazid, he's in Sham. So anyone who tries to absolve Yazid from this, there are multiple statements of all of those who did this, including Ibn Ziyad, and Yazid's statements himself, and Yazid's son's statement, Ma'aviyah, who advocated the throne and said, how can I accept this when I seen what my father did to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So it was Shimr and Amr bin Sa'd who said no. But what the actuality, and this is actually, my father's sheikh was in Lucknow at one time. He's originally from Jaipur, but before, and then in 1957 he came to Pakistan. But he would travel throughout India. So one point he was in Lucknow and he went to Farangi Mehr, which is kind of the headquarters of the Shias. So one of them, so my father's sheikh was there, and so he said some things, and so one of their scholars stood up and he says that, Sufi Sahib, how come, you make 5 salat and we make 3? Because the Shia, they do Dhuhrain and Maghribain. They can combine Dhuhr and Asr, and they combine Maghrib and Isha. So his response to them, he says, look, if I tell you something from the Quran, you'll tell me that this is Bi'adi Uthmani, this is the notebook of Uthman, and you won't accept it. You won't accept my explanation for it. If I tell you something from the hadith, you say, well, I don't accept this hadith and this hadith or that hadith, right? So he says, why don't I tell you something from something that you accept and I accept? He said, that'll be very good. So he says, look, it's the day of Ashura, the field of Karbala. Where and how did Imam Hussein al-Islam make Fajr Salat? So he says he made Fajr Salat, in the tent with all of those with him. He acknowledged that at the time of Fajr. He says, okay. He says, when and how did he make Dhuhr Salat? Because the fighting had already started. All of those who were his friends had already been martyred, so the only ones left were now the family, the household. So when and how did he make Dhuhr Salat? He said he made Dhuhr Salat as Salatul Khawf, which Salatul Khawf is when you're in battle, the Imam will make 4 rakat, but half of the group will make 2 rakat, the first 2 rakat with him, and then as the Imam is sitting, they will complete, when the Imam stands, they will complete their Salat, move, and then the other half will come and join. And then they will finish the Salat. They will make 2 rakat with the Imam as well. So the Imam still makes 4, everyone else makes 2. So Salatul Khawf, this is in the time of war. So half the army and then half the army. Yeah. So he made it as Salatul Khawf. When and how was he martyred? In what condition was he martyred?
Ostrich.
He was martyred at Asr, in the sajda of Asr. So he says to him, he says, he didn't join it. He didn't join Dhuhr and Asr. Then how can you join it? So the bigger scholar, Shia scholar there, he looks to the other one, he says to him, "Aadmi dekh ke sawal kiya karo." Look at the man before you ask. Don't ask somebody who can answer your question. That's what he meant. They don't want an answer. They want to show you how much they know. They want to humiliate you. So they couldn't do that. And he couldn't disagree with anything my father Sheikh said. So if you look at the army of Yazid, and I've gone over a little bit, I'm going to finish this up. If I look at the army of Yazid, conservative estimates, because there are certain estimates that say there were 30,000 of them. You have others who say no, there were only 5,000 or 10,000. And honestly, it doesn't even matter if there were 5,000. Why do 5,000 people need to come and fight against 100 people? I mean, if I look at it from a fighting standpoint, one person can, only 5 people can fight against one person at one time. There's not enough room. I extend that out with swords, maybe I extend it out to maybe 10 feet, or 10 people, right? Why did they need to send even 5,000 people, even 1,000 people against them? But conservative estimates are 22,000, which is what most scholars say, roughly 22,000 men in the end. Of them, at least 500 of them are fuqaha. These aren't just ordinary people. These are scholars. Thousands of them are hafiz of Quran. Just like in the Battle of Nahrawan, when Ali radiallahu anhu fought against the Khawarij, all 5,000 of them were hafiz of Quran and scholars of the time. And Ali radiallahu anhu, in the Battle of Jamal, and in the Camel, in the Battle of Safin, Ali radiallahu anhu fought them, but he also made Salatul Janazah on them. So he made Salatul Janazah for his own men and for the men that he fought against, because he accepted them as Muslims. He said that they have been deceived against us. In the Battle of Nahrawan, he fought them with the intention of sending them to hell. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said they are Khawarij, they have exited Islam. And yet they were Hafiz of Quran, scholars of the time. And if you look at the history of them, they all sided with the one who was disrespectful to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's something we're going to get into later on, inshallah. So this is what you have in Karbala. And Imam Hussein al-Islam, from the 2nd of Muharram, when he arrived in Karbala, he's going in front of them and telling them who he is so that there's no doubt as to who they're fighting against. So they can't come later on in the day of judgment and say, oh, we didn't know. Yeah, you did. He told you. And he didn't just tell you once. He told you every day, multiple times a day. For 7 days straight. You all knew. We have this concept, that Islam is a bunch of do's and don'ts. So if somebody does this or somebody doesn't do this, then they're Muslim. But the foundation to all of that, see, nothing above, like if you don't have a foundation to the house, you can build a beautiful house, it doesn't mean anything, right? It's not going to last. It has no value. There's a building here in downtown, nice looking building, they can't even sell it because the foundation's cracked. And they can't fix the foundation because of where it is. It's worthless, right? The foundation to everything in Islam is not simply saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. It's believing it. And Muhammadur Rasulullah doesn't simply say that, oh yeah, I acknowledge him as a prophet or as a messenger. It means to love him above everything else, and to love those whom he loves. So if I'm going to come against the one who he said, this is my flower, about the one who he said he's the leader of the youth of Jannah, about the one whom he said that, oh Allah, love him because I love him and love those who love him. But he didn't stop there. He also said have animosity against those who have animosity against him. So if I'm going to come against him, I can be praying all I want. I can be hafiz of Quran, hafiz of hadith, hafiz of everything. Doesn't mean anything. And so that's why, for these people, killing Imam Hussein al-Islam, what is, missing a salat compared to killing of Imam Hussein al-Islam? Just like what is later on when they destroyed the Kaaba. The same people catapulted fire into the Kaaba, right? 3 years later, right? Yazid sent the army. Same people who desecrated Medina Munawwara and used the masjid as a stable to park their horses. Killed and raped women in Medina Munawwara. And again, these are not things that are from the books of Sirah. These are things that are mentioned in the Hadith. Killed the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of these things, compared to the killing of Imam Hussein al-Islam, honestly are minor things, even though we think, oh, they're big things. Compared to the killing of Imam Hussein al-Islam, and even coming against Imam Hussein al-Islam, these are minor things. As I was saying in Jummah, the Kaaba is not even worth the life of one believer, much less the life of the blood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, when you read that, that these people didn't give importance to salat or didn't give importance to this or that, it shouldn't surprise us. Did that sort of answer the question? Okay, inshallah. I'll end here. We've gone over today. So next week, inshallah, unless some major thing comes up, I'll get back on track. So again, we're covering Ahlul Bayt in relation to the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, which there's not much really left there, and we'll get into the Khilafah of Umar, radiallahu anhu. We'll see the attitude, and we've talked already about the attitude of Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, to the household. And in the Sahih Hadith, what does he say? He says, I prefer to do good to the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than to my own household. And we'll start seeing the attitude of Sayyidina Umar, and vice versa. We see how Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha did what she did to defend the honor of Abu Bakr, and we'll see how later, like Umar, and the relationship that he has with Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh, and with Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Okay? So, inshallah, we'll cover that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to understand and to learn and to know, and allow us to love him and to love his beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all those whom they love. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.